computer. So بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. So inshallah today we're actually going to start with Juz' Tabarak. So today is the beginning, and if you actually look at Juz' Tabarak, you know there's something really interesting about the way that Juz' Tabarak actually goes. So if you look at Juz' Tabarak, you've got Surah Al-Mulk. All right, let's go really quick over it. You got Surah Al-Mulk and you got Surah Al-Qalam. But I want you guys to look into the way that the juz'u actually is split. So in Surah Al-Mulk, it actually takes you into recognizing Allah Almighty's magnificence. And then in Surah Al-Qalam, it takes you into recognizing the Prophet ﷺ's akhlaq and what it looks like not to have akhlaq. And why does it speak about the Prophet's akhlaq? Because the Prophet's akhlaq are really that foundation that actually made the Prophet ﷺ be al-Amin. And from that, remember, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. So think of Surah Al-Mulk as bringing in the foundation of La ilaha illallah, and Surah Al-Qalam putting in the foundation of Muhammadun Rasulullah. Then in Surah Al-Haqqa, with الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات, with الذين آمنوا, that was in Surah Al-Mulk, laying out the foundation of Tawheed. Then in Surah Al-Haqqa, it takes you into, remember, Al-Iman Billah wal-Yawm al-Akhir. In Surah Al-Haqqa, it takes you into Al-Yawm al-Akhir. It takes you on a journey. What does Al-Yawm al-Akhir look like? What does it actually have in it that should motivate me to bring about a very important change in my life? And that's with Surah Al-Haqqa. Tells us a story of what happens for those that will take their book in their right hand and those that will take their book in their left hand. And then it continues within that type of pattern. And then in Surah Al-Ma'arij, for those that want to deny Yawm al-Qiyamah, then it tells you a number of different things in a pattern for those that had denied Yawm al-Qiyamah historically and what actually happened to them. And it would tell us some of the things, and also it would tell us some of the stories that will happen on Yawm al-Qiyamah and what will actually happen during that day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, what will make them get into that success and what will make them get into, or the others get into the downfall. So that's with Surah Al-Ma'arij. Then Surah Nuh will tell you, well, never give up on giving the da'wah. Never lose hope, because Surah Nuh was trying to give you that a good example in how to recognize Prophet Nuh alayhi salam as an example for those that would give da'wah and not have any listeners. So Surah Nuh takes you into that story. I want to recognize that story right there. So we've got Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu Yawm al-Qiyamah, Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, for us to recognize that. But if you thought that Prophet Nuh was just too much of a prophet for me to imitate, well, Surah Al-Jinn comes along as one of that recognition of how Al-Jinn drew one of the best examples of a group and how they wanted to do their da'wah to their own people despite all the odds. So then Surah Al-Jinn takes us into that. Then we go with Surah Al-Muzammil. Well, not only were the jinn and Prophet Nuh, but it was also the story of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and in Surah Al-Muzammil. But in order to be a true da'iyah, in the midst of all the challenges, there are a number of different things that you need to give yourself, that support that you need to empower yourself with, because it's not an easy task. So it tells us about Qiyam al-Layl. It tells us about some of the things. Don't want to ruin it for you. And that's where it actually goes into Surah Al-Muddathir and goes further. Even when you're asleep, get out of your warm bed and get out of your warm blankets and go and do your da'wah. Even if you had a job, even if you had different tasks to do, but there is something that you as a Muslim, you've got a mission to accomplish, a mission. قم الليل or يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر. Then we'll talk about what it means, وربك فكبر, what it means to actually glorify the Lord Almighty, what it means to carry that mission, and what it means to be a person that carries the mission to teach himself and to teach others. And going through these stories, what it means to actually carry and be a person, not only of a mission, but a person that spreads the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's Surah Al-Muddathir, and that's hopefully what we'll be doing. Okay. That's what we'll be doing within our retreat. Any stories before I move on and actually start with Surah Al-Mulk? No questions. Good. It's okay if you ask questions, by the way. All right. You can enjoy the s'mores. I can see my kids are actually the most to enjoy it. All right. So let's do with Surah Al-Mulk. Surah Al-Mulk, you could see it's actually let me enlarge it right there. So Surah Al-Mulk is actually the 67th surah. But you want to keep in mind that when we say 67th surah, that doesn't actually mean that it is the 67th surah to be revealed. It doesn't necessarily mean so. The ayat were actually revealed at different times. So let's start with Surah Al-Mulk. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. What is Tabarak? Tabarak. Glory be unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that has all the mulk, that has all the power. But the word mulk, there we go. Okay. It went right straight inside. The word mulk doesn't actually mean just mulk to mean ownership of something, but if you own a matter, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that he doesn't just own it. So the word al-mulk is actually called al-istighraqiyya, which actually means it is the inclusive ad. It is including all the different types of ownership. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only owns everything that you see around you, but he's actually the owner of even the patterns of how things function. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's look at over here and actually get some of those markers. So pay attention to this one. So I want you to connect this one right there. I'm going to use a red color. So al-mulk, but the word al-mulk, hold on, let me get something bigger. The word al-mulk was actually connected وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٍ. Now, there's a very important ayah in the Quran that goes in the same pattern in bringing in the foundation of Tawheed. Who remembers? Ayat al-Kursi. Who said that? Who said Ayat al-Kursi? Ahsanti. Ayat al-Kursi. Let's look at Ayat al-Kursi and read it together. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-Hayy al-Qayyum. Now listen to this one. Allahu la ilaha illa hu. Allah, who there is no God worthy of worship but Allah Almighty. La ilaha illa huwa, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-Hayy al-Qayyum. Al-Hayy, in order to tell you he's all living, never dies. Al-Qayyum, in where he himself is actually self-sustained. In other words, his life is not dependent on others. So if someone were to ask, can the sun actually be God? Can the cell actually make itself and actually develop into a new other cell or a new creature? The answer is, well, if it is not capable of giving itself the momentum to continue living forever, and therefore, if it has an ending, that is actually in itself an evidence that it did not create itself, it did not originate itself. So here, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayy al-qayyum, in order to lay out the foundation of who and what actually makes a God. A God is a creator, not a creature. So here, what is a creator? A creator is the one that actually makes the foundation of something. And that's why the ayah was telling us right there, بيده الملك, he actually has the ownership of all matters, and وهو على كل شيء قدير, and he's actually capable of doing all matters. In other words, له مقاليد السماوات والأرض. Just as in Surah Shura, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the male and the female, and then he would say, له مقاليد السماوات والأرض, in order to tell us that al-mulk is not enough. It's not enough to be a God. It's not enough to own something, but you also have to be capable of actually bringing it, the cause, and what makes it function. الذي خلق. So guys, let's pay attention to here. I can see, are you guys focused?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's see al-mulk and ala kulli shay'in qadir as two pillars. Now the ayah will actually continue with these those founding ideas. That the first idea is that we're talking about al-mulk. But what does it actually mean to have al-mulk? What does it mean to have ala kulli shay'in qadir, the power to bring about a creation, the power to control something? What does it actually entail? So the ayah says, okay, الذي خلق الموت, to actually be the malik, to be the malik, to be the king, to be the founder, to be the one that has all the mulk, actually means you would have to be capable of creating. الذي خلق. So the Lord Almighty wants all of us to know that the Lord Almighty is the only creator. Why? He is the only one to possess and be the king of all matters. Why? Well, first, he was actually the creator. Creator of what? He's the creator of life and death. But are life and death actually creatures? Well, according to this ayah, yes, they are. Life and death, in other words, just as life is actually granted to you, and just as life is given to you, same thing with death, it is actually given to you. Death is beyond your scope. Death is beyond your capacity, just as life and maintaining life is beyond your capacity. Who is the one that actually grants that capacity, and who is the one that controls or that function? It's basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, the one to create is not enough, but to create, it's not to make something out of something, but to create actually means to originate without anything. And in other words, it's not by making cloning, for example, but it's actually to create something out of nothing. So that's why the ayah says, خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةِ, created life and death. Well, just as the Lord Almighty is the one that created the different laws of different things, well, that's why he is the only one that has the right to determine why life was created. In other words, the purpose of life. The purpose of life, the one who determines the purpose of life is the one that actually originated and created life. Are you guys with me here? So the one that created life is the one that determines what the purpose is. Therefore, the purpose is not to be created and invented, because your purpose, it actually preceded your existence. In other words, your essence preceded your existence and not the other way around. So the purpose for your life actually came before your life. In other words, purpose is to be found, not to be invented. Your purpose.
Explain with the eye.
Explain with
The eye.
the eye. Explain it with the eye. Now, when you actually look at the eye, was the eye the purpose for the eye to see? All right. Was the eye to see the purpose for it? Was the eye first created and then the eye decided to see? Or was it that the sight, the idea of making a sight, is what designed the eye? Same thing with your hearing. Hearing, the purpose of hearing, is what actually designed your ear. Same thing with everything in life. The purpose for your life is what actually designed your life. So therefore, the essence to your life actually came before your existence. And therefore, the purpose is not to be invented. You don't make, oh, this is my purpose in life. You don't make it. Your purpose actually came before your existence. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ. That is in order to test you. So the word الابتلاء لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Which of you actually has the most pious actions? وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ. At the end of the day, is that yes, the Lord Almighty wanted to test your actions, but the Lord Almighty is not in need. And that's why he said he's Al-Aziz. Al-Aziz means he's all sufficient. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, he says, لَوْ أَنَّ أَوَّلَكُمْ وَآخِرَكُمْ وَإِنسَكُمْ وَجِنَّكُمْ. If the early generations and the very late generations and all the ins, all the humans and all the jinn were actually as pious as the most pious person or pious jinn in the world, if all of them were as pious as the most pious person or pious being in the world, that would not increase anything in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. And similarly, if all the ins and all the humans and all the early generations and their late generations كانوا على أفجر قلب رجل منكم ما نقص ذلك من ملكي شيئا. It would not decrease from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mulk, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ownership, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power whatsoever, even if all people were as evil as the most evil person ever to exist. So that's why the ayah says, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ. He is not in need of the worship. Then who's actually in need of that worship? It is actually you. You are in need of that worship. Why would I be in need of the worship? Well, here's the thing. You as a human being, you have three different things in your body. You've got the body, which actually contains your feelings, contains very similar things to animals: eating, drinking, and reproduction. That's the body side. You've got the other side, which is al-aql. So let's do it right there. Gonna make it right there. Just gonna do a little thing. All right. So you've got the qal, you've got the al-jism, you've got the body. All right. And you've got the aql, you've got the mind, and you've got the ruh. You've got the body. Let's do it right here. You've got the jism, you've got the body, and you have the aql, and you have the ruh. Here's the thing. What will happen if you don't eat? You eventually die, right? We know that. It's not hard. What will happen to your aql if you don't actually educate yourself? You could die. How? Simple. If you don't educate yourself that fire is dangerous, you'll jump in it. Right? That's why somebody that has a mental illness, they need a guardian because they could really harm themselves. Right? What about ruh? Ruh actually is in three different elements. There's a ruh that actually brings life to you. Now, there's one side of the ruh that we actually have similar to animals, just like in jism, we actually are similar with animals with body. The same thing that you would see animals doing, eating, drinking, and reproducing, same thing with ruh. We hold on to our life. Why? Because we're just like animals. Our life is the only thing that we hold. It's part of our own instinct. But ruh is not all about bringing people into existence. A ruh for human beings is different than a ruh for animals. A ruh for animals, because animals were created for no purpose, that's why Islam allowed that you would actually slaughter, for example, for food. Why? Because those animals don't have a purpose. The ruh has no purpose anyways. But your ruh is so sacred because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the whole world, the whole existence, the whole galaxies to test you. So in Islam, when we're looking at ruh, oh boy, that's so big. What? It's gone. Okay. So your ruh as a human being is actually more worth than just spending your ruh on eating, drinking, and reproduction. So what is it? So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, in hum kal an'ami bal hum adal, that they're like animals. In fact, they're even more deluded. Why? Because they're spending their ruh on the body, and that they're actually just like animals because they did not value the most sacred thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given them, which is that ruh is actually the secret, the peace that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you and created this whole world just for that ruh, in order for you to go beyond than just a body, to actually connect beyond the materialistic world and connect with the Lord Almighty. So that's why when we're looking at your ruh, that's why, يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. Let's look at that ayah. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة. Now think of a nafs in this ayah is actually a ruh. What about that ruh? It says, oh, the most important thing in nafs al-mutma'inna, go back to your irji'i ila rabbiki. Go back to your Lord. That's the most important thing that you were actually created for. Irji'i ila rabbik. Go back to your Lord. Radiyatan mardiyya. To be content because you have a mission that is not an animal mission to eat and drink and reproduce. Your mission is higher than that. Your mission is to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's satisfaction. Rida Rabbil Alameen. The rida where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be content over you. Radiyatan mardiyya. How do I get there? Fadukhuli fi ibadi. So join with the salihin. Join with the ibadillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wadukhuli jannati. And enter the Jannah. So therefore, this ruh, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ, that one was to tell you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need for the ibadah, but the Lord Almighty. The Lord Almighty is not in need for it, but the Lord Almighty, He is al-Ghafur. He actually wanted you to get to the ibadah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted you to enjoy Jannah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted you to get the chance to get to Jannah. And that's why He said, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ. So He's telling you, He's not actually in need for it, but He's al-Ghafur because Allah Almighty loves more to forgive people than He actually likes punishing. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ actually said the hadith. He said that Allah Almighty is a lot more content over His servant when His servant would actually come and actually have his camel. He's in the middle of the desert, and all of a sudden he would fall asleep, and his camel that had all his belongings on it, his food, his water, his shelter, everything was on the hunchback of that camel. He wakes up and the camel is gone. Searches left and right, but the camel is gone. So then he decides to give up and says, might as well just die here. Puts himself on the sand and just puts himself to sleep because he lost all the hope. That's it. I'm going to die here. Might as well die in peace. So then he wakes up, and all of a sudden when he wakes up, he finds the camel right on the top of his head. So he says, oh, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, I am your Lord and you are my servant. He was so happy that he actually confused the whole matter. He confused everything. He was so happy, but he wanted to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is even happier when one returns to him than this man, and how he saw that his life coming back to him with that camel and everything on its back. الذي خلق سبع سماوات طباقا. So what does it mean? That he had created what? Why is he the one to actually deserve the power and deserve to be the creator? He said, well, one خلق hold on one خلق الموت والحياة. He created the death and the life and death, and he even, number two, and he even determined why and the purpose of why it was created. Two, he created سبع سماوات طباقا. He created 7 heavens that are on top of one another. ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت. You would not find in the creation of the Lord Almighty right up above you. Look into the skies. Do you see any type or any defaults in the creation? Everything follows a certain pattern. فارجع البصر. If you are still in doubt, go back and study it again. Study the physics of astrophysics, and study the physics of biology, and study the physics of space, and study the physics of everything that you see around you. هل ترى من فطور? Do you see any gaps in the creation of the Lord Almighty? You're still in denial. Well, go and study it again and again. كرتين. All you will find, your sight will come back to you, and it will find no missing gaps, and which is why they would actually call the planet Earth as the Goldilocks Earth, because everything, whether we're talking about temperature, whether we're talking about the water, whether we're talking about everything, the physics, everything is just right. Why? Because the Lord Almighty told us that He had created everything, and there's no flaws in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then He says, you want more? وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا. And we have created and beautified. The word زَيَّنَّا. Well, not only was it created, but there was something inside that creation that is different. There's actually the aspect of beauty in the creation. It's not just a random creation just to make everything in a certain pattern to make it function, but no, there's actually something even farther than that. The Lord Almighty, not only does he care about the function only, but he also cares that you would also feel that psychological content on the inside. If you're getting too warm, sweetheart, you can move these cookies and sit over here. Are you sure? No, sir. If you guys are getting too warm, I could see the girls getting roasted.
And this thing can burn you too. Especially if your color comes here.
Yeah, you could sit. Wallah, you could sit over here. Yeah, you can. Yeah, push them over here.
Come here.
All right, let's continue. وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا. Now, this is really important, even for women. It's not enough to just have everything in place in your homes, but it's also important to have a beautiful decoration, a beautiful fit. Beauty is actually part of it, and which is why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَمِيلٌ يُحِبُّ الْجَمَالِ. Allah Almighty is beautiful, and He loves beauty. Now, here's one thing, is that part of the things that actually frustrate atheists is actually in physics, in the creation that we see in the world, there's actually a pattern from the very small ion, from the very small atom to even the highest in the galaxies. You will always see those beautiful designs. In fact, the ayah was actually talking about even in space, that there's actually wardatan fakanat wardatan kaddiyan, that in space you will see certain galaxies that are like a flower in space. You guys have seen it before, right? Looks like a flower right in the space. And then it continues to tell you, bimasabih. And all those stars are actually just like lamps up in the sky, just to give you that comfort. In other words, everything around you, from the sea to the skies from up above you, that actually would turn on as lamps. And the earth at the bottom of you is actually containing the gold. And the wind is containing the breeze. And you could see the flowers, everything that even the richest would actually have. The most important thing is not necessarily the materialistic things of gold and silver and all that, but it's actually the ruh. It's actually the spirit, it's actually the soul that reviews and views the power of the Lord Almighty that is beyond the creation. All this actually goes away. But if this is a magnificent view, how would the magnificent view be like in Jannah? How would the magnificent view, if the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal, Allah Almighty is beautiful. In fact, in Jannah, when the mu'mineen would enter Jannah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, "O people of Jannah, are you content?" And they would say, وَمَا لَنَا لَا نَرْضَى. Why would we not be content where we've got everything? Why wouldn't we be satisfied? But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals himself. And then they would see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they would say, رَضِينَا رَضِينَا رَضِينَا. They would say, we are content, because they would see that seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is even more beautiful than Jannah itself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that it's even more beautiful than Jannah itself. And that's why when you look at the beautiful things around you, just remember Jannah, and remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is even more beautiful than the beauty that you see around you. Now, وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا. Not only did he create it for a reason, but created it to make it a zina for you, something that you would enjoy, something that you would feel that content part with bimasabih, masabih lamps. So think of those stars as lamps. وَجَعَلْنَاهَا رُجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ. Not only are they lamps, but they're actually a protection for you from the shayateen that will try to, or an attempt to actually go up to the heavens and actually listen to the Lord Almighty and the malaika speaking in order to get the information for the sorcerers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that is sama zayyana sama ad-dunya, that the stars are not only for beauty, but they actually have a different function, which is to protect you from the different evils that you don't recognize. In other words, your matters are actually protected, one, physically, in the way that everything was created. ما ترى, you will not see any, and you will not see هل ترى من فطور. Do you see any flaws? No, you don't. Well, not only was it physically without any flaws, but even psychologically, it was there to give you the psychological peace. Not only the psychological peace, but even the spiritual protection. And that's why it said, وَجَعَلْنَاهَا رُجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, you see this world around you, you're physically protected because there are no flaws in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. You are psychologically protected. That's why He beautified it for you. 3, you are spiritually protected. And that's why He's telling you that we've got even the stars doing a job, and the job is to protect you. From the stars on the top of you, to the earth below you, to the skies and the heavens and the earth and the waters and the oceans and the air that you breathe, everything was there to give you the comfort, and the Goldilocks planet to give you the comfort. But one thing, that is لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That's to test you. How are you going to live your life, not a life of body fulfillment, but a life of ruh fulfillment, where you go beyond an animal life where it just wants to eat and reproduce, to actually live in a connection with the Lord Almighty, to go beyond the surface of things and actually go to the orbit and the originator of all creation. So وَأَعْتَدْنَا لَهُمْ عَذَابَ السَّعِيرِ. And shayateen, they were actually prepared. They had been prepared a whole adhab, a whole torment of sa'ir, of hellfire. In other words, it didn't say right there. It was just telling you, well, just take a look at the different things. Well, if you decide to live your life just like a shayateen, in where they just want to go against the Lord Almighty, so He's telling you, well, وَلِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Why? Connecting it with the shayateen. Those that would deny their Lord Almighty, deny that He was the creator, deny His power, deny the reason that He created them for, and deny the powers that they were granted to be able to live up to the mission. Well, those are the ones كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. Notice that He didn't say كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ, but He said كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. What is the difference between the word Allah and Rabb? The difference between the word Allah is that the word Allah actually contains 2 elements, al and ilah. Al means the, ilah means God. So let's do it right there. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you guys could see it. All right, so here's the word Allah. Okay, so the word Allah is actually al and ilah together. Connected together, it became Allah. So technically, it actually means the God. That's why the word Allah was actually a word that was even used by the Hebrews. The word Elohim, the word Allah was used by the pagan Arabs. They too use the word Allah. And even the Christian Arabs today, they still use the word Allah, because the word Allah actually means the God. but the word Rabb actually means Lord. The difference between the word Allah and the word Rabb is actually a different connection. Because the word ilah means God, but the word Rabb actually means cherisher. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you right there, well, remember the one that created your life and created from the top things to the lowest things, and he is therefore the one that cherishes your life in every single aspect. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for those that would deny what their Lord Almighty had cherished them with, those that deny it are going to be basically deserving adhabu jahannam. They would be deserving the torments of hellfire. But why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given them and blessed them from the top thing to the lowest matters that are under their feet to what is inside their bodies, all those powers in order to connect to the Lord Almighty and be thankful. But instead, they had denied, kafaru bi rabbihim. They had denied their Lord Almighty by denying all the blessings that the Lord Almighty had given them. وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. Bi'sa means horrible and evil. That's the worst thing to be in. Al-Masir, an ending that is the worst ending. إِذَا أُلْقُوا فِيهَا سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور. When they're thrown in it, listen to this fire. Let's just listen. Do you hear? You hear it? If you get closer, maybe on my side, you hear the fire? We have a fire in front of us right here for those that are listening. Now, if you actually get closer, there would be the sound, other than the ticking sound, there's a sound that where the wind blows in order to make the fire. All right. So this is سَمِعُوا لَهَا شَهِيقًا. They would hear a shahiq. A shahiq is an inhale. They would hear an inhale from the fire of Jahannam while it is blazing. تكاد تميز من الغيظ. It would be as if it is breaking up, just like when you hear the wood breaking up when it's actually blazing harder and harder and hotter and hotter. من الغيظ, from all the anger that it is in. كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير. Every single time a group would be thrown in there, سألهم, those that are in charge, the guards of hellfire. Malik Khazanat Jahannam is one of those. Did you not get someone to warn you of what this day was going to look like? ألم يأتكم نذير. Didn't you get someone to warn you? قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير. They said, verily, we got someone to remind us. فكذبنا, but we denied. And we just said, the Lord Almighty never revealed anything. You are just in delusion, in a great and big delusion. That was our response. Now that was, and here's one thing. The Prophet ﷺ said no one enters hellfire until they actually admit that they actually deserve it. In other words, they will themselves admit that, yeah, that's exactly what we did. We denied the truth of all this. SubhanAllah. It's some of the most important things that are actually supposed to be a great reminder for us is death. Our friends dying, our family members dying, our loved ones dying, despite the sorrow in it, but there's actually a blessing in it to remind us of al-akhirah. to remind us of al-akhirah, because as human beings, we tend to forget easy and fast. So when someone dies, it's that moment to recognize, why are they silent? Why aren't they saying anything? Why aren't they coming back? Visiting graves actually helps us recognize that. Where did they go? What does it mean that they just vanished all of a sudden? What does it mean that they just all of a sudden are gone? What does it mean that they were actually putting them in the grave? What does it mean that I will be next? What does it mean that I will have no choice to refuse this fate? I won't have a choice, neither will you. And that's why الآية started out الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم, the one that created life and death in order to test you, in order to make us recognize that, wait, don't get carried away with life. Don't get carried away with working, and don't get carried away with your body and making yourself, all the fame and all the friends and all that. That is all going to wear, just like someone else in front of you. Their beauty wore off. A matter of time. And just as time is controlled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are controlled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why ayat al-kursi, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyu al-qayyum, la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. No sleep, no tiredness overcomes Allah Almighty. Lahu ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ard. He controls what is in the earth, what is in the heavens, and what is on earth. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم. He knows the past and knows the future, something that you cannot contain. And that's why the Lord Almighty tells you, well, he knows your past and he knows their future. Why? Because time is not whatsoever what limits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Time limits you, but does not limit Allah Almighty. Can you unplug the TV? Yep, and put the laptop. That's okay, put the laptop. فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير. So then they admit. فاعترفوا بذنبهم. They admit their sins. فسحقا. So now what is فسحقا? فسحقا means far and far and far away would they be pushed. And the is that they will not actually be given the ability to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the worst. Just as the mu'mineen on the other hand, with the most beautiful thing that they were granted, which is to actually be, oh, sorry about that, hold on. No, we don't have enough plugs. So, okay, here we go. We're still back on here. All right. So, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ. Now, the ayah continues and tells you, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those that have khashya, but not any kind of khashya. What is a khashya? A khashya is a feeling on the inside. But the feeling on the inside is a feeling of connection with the Lord Almighty, is a feeling where يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ, they would connect with their Lord Almighty. The ruh is always connecting with Allah Almighty, not necessarily only in public, but in private. In private, what are they doing? يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ. They're having a personal relationship with Allah Almighty. It's very easy to have taqwa when people are watching, and especially when other salihin are watching.
Oh, yes.
But when you're alone on that laptop, when you're alone with that phone, when you're alone in that on campus and no one else is seeing you, your parents are not watching, all that, it's a lot harder because no one's watching but Allah. Now that's that intimate relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us. يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those are a different level. Those are the people that actually live the level of al-ihsan. What is the level of al-ihsan? There are three levels. There's the level of al-Islam, there's the level of al-Iman, and there's the level of al-Ihsan. What is the level of al-Islam? The level of al-Islam is you understand that Islam is the true religion. You believe it, but that's still within your mind. The level of Iman, it goes farther than an understanding and a comprehension in your mind. The level of Iman, it's affecting deeply into your heart, that it's actually affecting your behavior. And that's why all the ayat that relate to al-mu'mineen are always telling us, for al-mu'mineen, it would always tell us about a behavior that they would do. Why? Because it of iman, waqara fil qalb, it went inside their heart and it affected their behavior. But al-ihsan, it actually is a higher level because it went, remember, body, mind, and ruh. So mind is the level of al-Islam. Body, it started affecting your body and your behavior. That's the level of Iman. Ruh is the level of Ihsan. It went beyond. This person doesn't just apply Islam, but they actually have a different sense. They can actually believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and actually have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if they can actually see Allah himself. That's a different level. It's a level of ruh. And that's why the ayah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَأَجْرٌ كَبِيرٌ. Those that would fear their Lord Almighty, those that would have a connection with the Lord Almighty in private, in seclusion, when their ruh is so connected, those are the people, لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ. They would have al-maghfirah. Their sins are all wiped. Their sins are all dismissed. And not only that, but they will have an ajrun kabir, an ajr, a reward that is big, but not only big, because the ayah didn't say al-ajr al-kabir. The ayah said ajrun kabir. It is uncountable, infinite reward. Well, you cannot even count it. Goes on and on and on and on. وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور. And in the end, whether أسروا قولكم, whether you say your words in public, in the loudest form, or you say them fil israr, in private, Whether you're speaking to a person, using an SMS, using a very low voice, privately whispering, the Lord Almighty, إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. What is that connecting to? If somebody's affected by the fire there, you can move elsewhere. I can move these and you can sit over here. We've got seats here too. So if somebody wants it, we've got seats here too. Okay, good. وَأَسِرُّوا قَوْلَكُمْ أَوْ اجْهَرُوا بِهِ إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. Is that related to dua too? It can be related to dua. So when do I actually make the dua in a loud voice or do I make it in private? Make the dua. Make the dua and let that dua be sometimes heard. So you might get an ameen from a hajj. Where's our hajj? You might get an ameen from a hajj. You might get someone else, the malaika. You might actually encourage others to make dua. Usually people are shy to actually represent and speak about iman in public because they're not used to it. They're shy to actually make a dua in public and they would think that, oh, it's riya. If you would think it's riya, do the opposite. What does that mean? If you would actually not do it, that is confirming that it was riya. So what should you do? Speak it. Do the dua. أسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور. Your Lord Almighty knows every single detail that is on the inside. بذات الصدور, because He is your Lord Almighty. When you're feeling that sorrow, when you're feeling lonely, remember, reach out to your Lord Almighty. He knows. No matter how many therapists you try to reach out, trust me, there are certain pains that no one will really feel and no one will really understand, but Allah Almighty. Say it to Allah Almighty. Because if you say it to Al-Abd, you want to remember that that servant, the only reason why you saw them strong is because they managed to hide their weakness. But they are as human as you. They are as human as you. So reach out to your Lord Almighty in al-ubudiyya, in servitude. Reach out to your Lord Almighty in al-mahabba, in love. Reach out to your Lord Almighty in at-ta'a, in obedience to Lord Almighty. In all these three elements, that's what actually makes it tawheed. ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. Now, what does that have to do with all of it? ألا يعلم من خلق. Verily, isn't the one that created aware and most knowledgeable of what he had created? That is the Lord Almighty. So therefore, even the sharia that the Lord Almighty had obligated you or forbid on you, different matters, are actually for your sake. You may think of it as boring, hard. You may think of it as this way, but it's actually أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. Doesn't the Lord Almighty that created? He is al-Latif. What is al-Latif? Al-Latif is the most subtle. S-U-B-T-L-E. What does that mean? The one that exists, the one that controls the matters, but you don't feel him. The Lord Almighty is so subtle that you don't actually recognize. Just like, for example, you're taking an inhale and an exhale. You're right now Your body is doing all that blood circulation. Your body is doing so many different functions. You're not even recognizing heart pumping and your kidneys, your liver, every single thing, your brains, each and every single one is doing so many different functions right this minute. You don't even recognize it. You don't even feel it. Who actually makes it function? You might say, well, it's a power that is there and it gives it to function. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that that's actually kufr to think this way. You know why? Because to actually think that matter is actually given the momentum and the power to function by itself, and not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it the power, is actually a total wrong understanding of understanding the world. Because the one, خلق الموت والحياة, what hayat is really the power and the capacity that was given to anything that you see around you to bring it to life. What is life? Life is your body functioning. Life is to make that motion. Life is making all that. Then therefore, what makes life is really Allah. And therefore, to actually think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you as a matter, and therefore you just basically have some kind of microorganisms that make you function, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's it, he just gave that, that momentum and it just functions on its own like a battery, is actually wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you he's the one that gives you all the momentum. He's the one that gives the power, the energy, the force, the power for you to even. That's why as a mu'min, you say Bismillah when you eat. Bismillah when you drink. Bismillah Rabbi, Bismika wada'tu jambi. You tell yourself, oh Allah Almighty, Allahumma Bismika wada'tu jambi. By your name I rest my side. Why? In order for you to recognize that even when you rest your side, even when you eat the food, even when you live around, say Bismillah, because if it wasn't for the power of Allah, you would not have been able to do what you're doing. Not sleep, not wake up, and not eat, and not drink. So it's really the power of Allah Almighty. So for a mu'min, that's why they do the dhikr. For a believer, the dhikr is to revive a vision. To revive a vision from seeing the world as matter in motion to seeing the world as Allah Almighty giving the matter the power to make motion. As the power of Allah Almighty in everything that we see in our existence. That's why he says, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. He's a latif, you don't recognize, but he's there. Al-Khabir, he's capable of knowing. In fact, he is Al-Khabir, he has all the ilm to know what is good for your future and what is good for your past, simply because the Lord Almighty is not encompassed by time, but you are encompassed by time. And that's why you can't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Because time is part of the physics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا. After speaking about the sama, now he tells you, oh yeah, you saw the sky, didn't you? All right, well, let's go right beneath you. After talking to you about a little bit about yourself, let's talk about the earth that's underneath you. هو الذي جعلكم الأرض ذلولا. About the sama, he actually said السماء هل ترى من فطور. And then for السماء, he said زينا السماء بمصابيح. It's all beautified for you with all these lamps. For الأرض, what did he say? جعلكم الأرض ذلولا. He made earth be something that you can subjugate. Subjugate? What does that mean? You don't make the earth make plants and the produce, but the Lord Almighty is the one that gives it that capacity. So he said, وَالَّذِي جَعَلَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا. The earth won't say, I'm not gonna plant for you anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, He actually made the earth ذَلُولًا. ذَلُولًا means it will easily follow your instructions. ذَلُولًا. You give it the orders, you give it the instructions, and it will do as you order it to do. So therefore, recognize that if you have that power to do, then you got to make sure that you actually have within that, there is that accountability. So if you were given the power to do, whenever you're given the power to do something, you're given an accountability. If you have an intelligence that's more than others, you're going to be held accountable for that intelligence because you're given a different power. If you're given a power of money, you're going to be held accountable for the money more than someone else because you were given a different power. If you were given a power of body power, beauty, or voice, or a motivational speaker, you're going to be held accountable within that. Whenever you recognize a capacity that you own, a capacity that you own is not to be necessarily something to be proud of, but it's actually that you'll be something held accountable for. So recognize your capacities before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, you did have that capacity. Why didn't you use it? What did you do with it? And that's why in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, no, you can't change your gender, female, male, etc., because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you that no, you were created as a female. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the best thing that He created you in, and your Lord Almighty knows what features He had given you, and your Lord Almighty created you in the best of the creation. I think something's stinging me. Sorry, you guys. Ow, 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 ow. Wait. No, seriously, I think something's stinging me. Don't worry. I got it.
It's already time.
I know, it's like, what? Aysha, you want me to stop right there? Okay, let me just finish this ayah. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا. Then walk and on its sides. Why walk on the sides and not walk in the middle? Be humble. Don't take the space to yourself. Be humble. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا. Be on the side. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا can also mean walk in the roads. Take a moment to walk, and it's basically a sunnah as well, sometimes to walk barefooted, to recognize the connection between you and earth, to recognize the connection between you and the reality of yourself. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. Don't deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you, well, right there, He had given you al-ard dhalula. The earth is subjugated to you, but remember, that is when you're held accountable. But at the same time, be humble, practice your humility, practice and recognize, not because you've got the degree or you've got the money, you've got the power. Don't think that you're on top of others. Give space for others and be humble. And eat from the rizq. In other words, لا إفراط ولا تفريط. It's between the two extremes. وَإِلَيْهِ النُّشُورِ. And recognize that your return is to the Lord Almighty. So I guess, Zamzam, is this where we end? All right. Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. You have to. There's nothing like it. Sunrise is at around 5:20. Can you make? You can. What? No, you don't stay awake. You go sleep. Is there a tahajjud you guys are making? What? Hold on, I'm going to end my recording. Hold on. I have to stop my